Have you ever dealt with narcissistic abuse, which has led to depression and brokenness and anxiety? Well, I ask you to stay tuned and listen, because I want to share with you my journey of how I healed from narcissistic abuse and how I'm healing and evolving and changing my life. So I'm Kerry and I'm the creator of the Healing From Within community. So welcome, and please like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos. If you, like me, are on a journey of healing and figuring it out, how to heal spirit, soul and body, I really believe that we're made up of 3 parts, and if we work on all 3 parts of us, then we can heal from deep within, and we can heal from deep depression, from brokenness and hurt. But today I want to share with you and talk about narcissistic abuse, because I dealt with that in my life, but I didn't know that it was narcissism. I'd never even heard of it. I didn't know what it was. I actually didn't even know I was depressed. I felt like I was really, really down and broken. And it was getting worse and worse, because my relationship over the years was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know anything about narcissistic abuse until I went to a counselor. So I share with you on all my videos of my journey and the different things that happened, all the different traumas, all the way through life, from childhood to adulthood, that had happened in my life to push me to the point that I broke and I snapped and I fell into deep, deep depression and brokenness, to the point where I was suicidal. But I didn't know that was what was wrong with me. I didn't even know that I was being abused narcissistically, until I was taking these steps to try and get back up off the floor after being suicidal. And the doctor, as I shared with you before, pushed me and really worked with me and gave me some really new methods and ultimatums to try and push me out there to start a new life, which I'm thankful for and I talk about on my other videos. But I went to a counselor for a little while, and she really taught me about narcissistic abuse. She read all my emails and my texts that was coming through constantly from my ex-husband, and she was the one who said, okay, this is bad narcissistic abuse. You will never heal. This is why you can't get free. You will be depressed constantly. You will never break out of this, because it's pushing you. Every time I felt like I was doing a little bit better, I was doing the methods that the doctor had said, and I'd gone back to school and I was doing all these different things to help myself, but I was still really struggling because of this narcissistic abuse. And she said, I want you to go away and read up on the God of narcissist, and read up on all what it is and what narcissism is all about. And I went away and I read, and I had no clue. And she said, right, what I want you to do is completely cut this person off, so they can never communicate with you ever again. They don't need to. There's no need. Don't ever need to talk to you. And she could see I was not strong enough, because every time I would get these messages, or every time he would come and yell and scream at me and terrorize me, I would then fall into more depression. I would get broken again. I just couldn't move forward with this. So anyway, I did exactly what she said. She said, cut this off. And then she could see how bad things was, and how I was so isolated, and we'd moved away from all my family and friends before he left, and before all the double life that he was living and all the terrible things all unfolded. And so I was isolated. I had no family or friends to lean on at all. And I'm so broken. It was like the topping on the cake when my marriage ended. It was like all the trauma, one by one, or just like kept piling on top of one another. And obviously all this narcissistic abuse, which had already pulled me down and got me to the place where I felt like I'd not even told any friends. Nobody knew that my marriage was in such a mess. I always lived this lie of trying to portray that I had this great marriage, that I didn't. And I was always broken and crying to him, why do you treat me like this? Why do you not want me? Why this, why that? And his behavior towards the last 5 years of the marriage got worse and worse and worse, screaming and shouting, always pulling me down and making me feel like I was a nothing, making me feel ugly and fat and like I wasn't good enough. And I'd got this self-hatred, this self-loathing, that I couldn't look in the mirror without crying and feeling so ugly and feeling like I was nothing and a nobody. And the shouting got worse and worse and worse. And yeah, like, I didn't know anything about narcissistic abuse. And so she taught me about this. And then in the end, she said, you need to go and be with your family and friends. You need to go back to your family. We'd moved thousands of miles away back to England from my family, because my family had all moved to the States when I was a teenager for my dad's job. And so we'd moved back to the UK, him already knowing that he was living these two lives on singles websites, meeting people, like getting into relationships, and he was preaching and teaching the word of God and leading people, praying over people, everything, but still having this other life. But his anger was getting worse and worse and worse. And obviously, I think that the double life was making him angry, but it was coming out on me. And yeah, and I was always made to feel like a nobody. I always cared only about himself. We moved for his jobs. We did different things for him, so we could make his life better and what he wanted, but it was always a bad move for me and the kids, always, every time. But I was always a very submissive wife, and I felt like, as a Christian woman, that I had to live with this, because we was always taught that you could only ever leave a relationship if it's adultery, but I didn't even know that anything like that was happening. So I always felt like I had to keep my family together. I had to stay in this, and I had to follow him, because we get taught that our husbands, the man is the head of the home, the head of the church, and we have to submit. So I was very submissive, but when I first got in this relationship, I was very I was only teenager, only 18, but I had all these dreams, and I'd moved cities for a job, and I'd traveled a lot and gone on a lot of humanitarian mission trips, and just absolutely had goals and dreams. And I ended up giving them all up, all of them, and doing nothing. But then I found that I was working alongside him in the church. I pretty much ran most stuff. He did the upfront stuff, and I ran everything. Like I did all the mission work and the all of the outreach and the women's and the kids and the youth, leading them and putting on programs for everybody. And I taught dance, because I always taught dance, so I always did dance classes for the kids, so they could come in off the streets and learn dance, and be part of like a drama group, a dance group. So I used to do all of that stuff, and I did enjoy it. And my kids, they went to a Christian school, and I made lots of friends with this Christian group of women. But we all went to different denominations, different kind of churches. So we didn't push our stuff on each other. We just had this good friendship going off. And all our kids was soccer kids, and basketball and track, and they played all these sports, and we was the crazy moms on the side. So we formed a women's soccer team. I grew up with soccer anyway, so we joined this. We did this group of, we put this soccer team together, and we just enjoyed one another. So I moved from all of that my whole life. We'd moved back to the UK. My husband refused to get an immigration lawyer to work out our green card because it kind of like got a little screwed up because it was my mom had put in for me because my parents was citizens and my siblings and my 2 older kids. So, but she passed away just like in the midst of it, and so it put a bit of a spanner there in our visa process, and we couldn't work it out because we needed a lawyer, and we had multiple people offering to pay for an immigration lawyer to sort it all out for us, but he refused, so we had to go back to the UK. So anyway, he knew he was already living this double life for ages, which I didn't know, and he was getting so abusive, and I was just, at this point I was really, really down, struggling because my mama just passed, and struggling because I felt so alone. He was so mean to me all the time, and it was just bad. It was very, very bad. And so we moved back to the UK, and then it all started unraveling and coming out. I found everything out myself. I had to do some investigating because it was just getting so bad. And then it started to unravel, and then he just admitted it all, and it was awful. I'm reading all these emails between him and other women, lots of them, years back, just reading them. Like, I felt like I was gonna die when it come out. I lost the capacity to think. I don't even know what happened. It was just like, it was horrible. And I read all these emails between him and other people, and when they met up and blah blah blah, and found that his singles website, his singles profile, and I was absolutely in bits, and my mind snapped, and I think all the trauma all the way up, and it just snapped. And so at that point I just floated to the store. I don't know how I did it. I drove to the store, but I can't even quite remember going to the store, how I got there. And it's like something snaps inside of you when you get to that suicidal place, because I forgot that I had kids who was depending on me. I forgot what this would do to anyone, and I just went into the store, bought 3 boxes of paracetamols and a drink, and sat in my car and took them. And I was waiting it out, waiting, and I was freezing cold, and I was waiting and waiting. Nothing happened. So I just drove over the road to the local pub, and I got a big glass of wine, and I went through my bag, and sorry about that, not luckily at all, but at the time I thought it was lucky, I guess, but I found another thing of pills, paracetamols, Tylenol. So I took them, I just downed them all, and with this big glass of wine, and thankfully I didn't die, obviously, but at the time I just snapped. And I took them, and I was waiting to die, and waited till the end, till it was closing. And I think it was like 2 a.m. or something when they closed, and they rang the bell to leave. And I tried to get into my car, and I couldn't do the keys, and I couldn't press anything. I couldn't get it working. And all I kind of vaguely remember is stumbling through the streets to get home. My husband knew what had happened because I texted him and said, I know everything, which I didn't, but I thought I did, because it got even worse, all the stories as it came out, and he confessed, and then I had to do some digging and find out, and it was just horrid. And so I got in the house, and I must have passed out on the floor. So the next day I woke up to the kids and husband there, and I was very, very sick, very ill, and I just locked myself in my room for days and days and days. But eventually I started to get very sick in my body, very sick, and I had to get some help. And that point then I went into the hospital a few times with sickness and wanting to end it, and I just couldn't get it together. I was gone. And anyway, it was a journey. It was a journey from that point on, because I was just like a mess for a little while. And I when I look back and I regret that, and I feel like what I did to my children, what I must have put them through, like, I don't think they quite comprehended what had happened. I think my dad tried to cover as much as possible for them at that time, but they knew, especially my daughter, and it was very, very horrible. I wish I could, it's like, you know, you wish you could take it back because you know that you put them through hell, but I didn't mean to. I snapped, like, and I will always be sorry, because I know it's a journey. We have to forgive ourselves for our journey, and we have to realize that it's just a journey of life, and sometimes we have ups and downs, and sometimes we figure it out, and we don't know why or how or whatever. I'm starting to realize now, after following some of these teachings that I follow and I share with you on all my other videos, different traumas and the different methods and the different teachers I found, which has revolutionized my life. So I'm figuring out why and how I got to that state and everything. But at the time I had no clue. And then I think the next day after that had happened and I did that, this lady from Michigan, America, she messaged me, she contacted me, and she said, I'm so sorry, I want to apologize to you for what I've done. And I had no idea who she was, and she was like, your husband was talking to me all last night, so instead of being out looking for me or calling me and making sure I was okay or trying to get me to come home so we could talk about it and work it through or anything, he was talking to this woman all night. And she just said, I'm so sorry for what I did. I met your husband on Facebook Scrabble, and we just basically fell for each other. And sometimes he said he needed to stop because he had a wife and children, but then we would, you know, find ourselves like being drawn to each other again, blah blah blah. Like I was just very confused why she was messaging me, or why she was coming at me, and she was just saying she had feelings for him, really loved him, blah blah blah. But I was just like a mess. All this happened and I was a mess, and all his anger and wrath for the previous 5 years, it was awful. You know, like one night I woke up to him strangling me, absolutely, had me down, strangling me, like I could not breathe, I couldn't talk, I couldn't do anything but bash as hard as I could on the wall. And my son was in the next room and he ran in, and then he stopped, my husband stopped, and so he was strangling me, shouting, it's your fault. And I was like, afterwards I was like, I asked him what was my fault. He never told me what was my fault ever. But I did take on a lot of guilt, like it was my fault, like I'd done something very wrong, like to bring all this on for him to treat me like this. And the more I'm learning about narcissistic abuse, they do that, they make you think it's you, that you've done something wrong, like you're not good enough. I started thinking that I wasn't good enough, in physically, emotionally, sexually, whatever. I felt like it was me, and so I was always trying to change and trying to make him love me. That was my big thing. I wanted to make him love me, and I was always trying to make him love me, but it just didn't happen, and it just got worse and worse over the years. And I lived for those small moments of where it was good, and that was one of the things. I've been following somebody, a doctor called Dr. Remy, a specialist in narcissistic abuse. Been following her teachings lately, and I'm like, okay, now I understand. And you live for those small moments, and you keep saying it's not all bad, and you remember those little good times. And I became very submissive and very downtrodden, so I didn't love myself. So the more I didn't love myself, the more I accepted bad behavior. And I didn't realize that I had a choice to live. I felt like, because I was a good Christian woman and I was working for the church and I was serving God in the church, and I had to live in this. And at that point, I didn't know that there was any adultery, so I felt like I had to stay in that. So I did for years. Going back to this therapist, when I went to this therapist, she shared with me all about narcissistic abuse, read all these emails, these texts, and then I started getting these emails from his new partner, and she had no idea of our life together. I'd never met from Adam. I didn't know about, I was getting these horrible messages and she had no clue of anything. And so anyway, yeah, I was getting these horrible messages, and at the beginning he would come and pick up the youngest child to see him for a bit. And when he did, he'd be in the parking lot outside screaming, and my neighbors was like, who's that man who keeps screaming at you, yelling at you? And I had no clue what to do, and he'd just come in the house whenever he felt like it and yell and scream at me. And it was the therapist who said, you can't win with a narcissist, you have to cut them off completely, cut all communication, put boundaries. They cannot come in your house, they can't speak to you, can't do anything. So I had to do that, and she was the one who, in the end, after watching and talking with me and seeing what was going on in my life, she begged me to move back to my family, begged me to go be with a support system, get back, let my dad help me, let my family help me, and get back to where I had people around me, because she could see I couldn't do it alone. The doctor could see that I was grieving my old life. I wasn't just grieving, I was grieving my mom, losing my mother, which was my best friend in the world, and I had to do it all alone because I was alone. And like, I have no one to talk to. He didn't help me through it. He didn't care. He never even come to the hospital when I had to have her on life support for a week. I had her on life support. I didn't want to let her go, but the doctors were saying, no, she's brain dead. You know, and in the end, I'd choose to switch off the machines, but he never came once, not once, to the hospital, never helped me through it, nothing. So, and then just different things happened with his job, and then the visa, and we moved, and it was just, yeah, a nightmare. So I was still grieving my mom big time, and I was crying for her all the time. I wanted her to come and help me heal. Even now, you know, when I think about that, because it was a hard time, you know, and I wanted my mother to help me through it, and she wasn't there. Well, I didn't think she was, I don't know then, but if you go back through my videos, you'll see how actually she answered me. She helped me, and she sent someone who said, your mother sent me, and it described her and everything. But go back through my videos, you'll see how my journey of healing began, and how my mum did help me. But at the time, I was like grieving my mum, grieving my life. My life was gone. I had no longer worked for the church. I no longer was working in humanitarian work and serving people and youth work, and I worked in a children's home for a while, and I felt like I couldn't go back to any of that work, because how could I give out? I was this broken mess. And I was grieving my marriage, even though it was not good. And even though all that had happened, I didn't know where to go or what to do. And, you know, I met him, I was engaged at 18, and so I was with him for 20. It was like 20 years later, I found myself alone, you know. So I didn't know what to do. And the doctor realized I was grieving my life and the trauma, what had happened. So he pushed me to go to college. He pushed me to start learning new skills, realizing that I still was capable of starting a whole new life. And this therapist, she was like, you know, you got to cut this off. You got to, you will never heal. And then she pushed me to move back to the States. She had some time with my children, and well, with one of my children, and realized what was really going off, because she shared some of the stuff, and she was like, you can't do this. And then in the midst of it, my youngest got diagnosed with type 1, and I needed to be his nurse. I needed to heal. I needed to figure this out, because how could I take care of him? I think that pushed me. Actually, I feel like half the time he saved my life. Me having to be his nurse, even though I don't wish this on anybody, and I wish I could take his sickness from him. I want to, because it's just like been so hard. But he was a godsend to me because we figured it out. It's like we figured it out together. And he was very afraid of needles. He had a fear of needles, so we had to see his child psychologist to get him over these fears and to get him to do his finger pricks and his shots several times a day, you know. And she talked me in the end, talked me along with the counselor I was going to go back to be with my family in the States. She was like, you can't do this alone. One, you're struggling with depression yourself, and two, this takes a family. This takes a unit to work, to be there, to do this job. It's 24 hours. This learning, this skill, this taking care of him, and his doctor and his nurse and his child psychologist said we'd called his dad quite a few times now, asked him to come in for training, said you need support, you can't do this alone, and he doesn't want to know and he won't come in, so you gotta go and be with your family. And they talked me into it, so I was like, you know what, okay. And I shared with you before, I went homeless with my 3 children. We lost the house, and I had no one. And I remember me and the kids, we emptied the house and we had it all on the lawn, and I sat there crying like, where do I go? What do I do? And I had a worker from the council. The way it works in England, they give you a worker if you're homeless, and they said you have to go homeless for us to help you. I tried my hardest not to. I tried somewhere to go and to rent a place, and it just didn't work. And so in the end, we were sitting on the lawn with all our furniture on the lawn, like couches and everything. And with the kids, they helped me take everything out of the house that I'd boxed up and everything. We sat there. And I happened to run into this. I ran to the store to get something. I don't even know why. And I ran into this lady that I used to work with years ago. And I told her what was happening. And I says, I'm waiting for my worker to come, and we're going to figure out where they're going to put us. They've got no room in the shelters, no room anywhere. And we sat there, and she said, and I'd gone to the store, and she said, I'll help you. I'll put some stuff in my conservatory. I said, well, I've got somebody who said that I could use the garage. And so she took loads after loads to her conservatory and to this garage, and we just put everything in there. Unfortunately, the one in the all the things in the garage rotted, but I didn't know where to put it. But yeah, we just did that, and she helped me, and I'm like, and I'd not even seen this woman for a long time, for years, and just happened to bump into her in the store. It was just like, wow, you know, okay. So we did that, and my worker was trying to find a homeless place, and there was nowhere available. All the shelters was full, all the hotels that they put people up was full, and they help women and children. They get you in a council house. So between them, my friend, and the lady that I knew from work years before, between her and my worker, they made loads of calls. They found a little place with 2 beds in the town centre. So me and the kids went there, 2 beds for 4 of us for 6 whole months. And so me and my youngest shared a bed, and one on a bed and one on the floor. And it was a horrible time, trying time. But in that time is when I went back to college and did what the doctor said. In that time, I was trying to build myself back up, but I couldn't. So these counselors, my son's counselor and my counselor, begged me to go back to the States and be with my family, begged me to go, because they knew that if not, I'd probably end up just jumping off a bridge. They knew I couldn't survive the way I was. I was in survival mode always, so my body was acting to it. So my back was hurting, my neck, I was getting frozen shoulder, frozen neck all of the time. My children was depressed and going through it. Like, it was just the worst time of my life. And in the end, I said, yeah, I will go back to the States. I will go back and be with my family. I'll go back and work this visa out with my family. They can sponsor me and I can get a visa. And it's took many years, many years to figure this out. A lot of money my family's thrown into it. But finally, I'm getting my visa, but they wouldn't let me work until right now. So it was just like trying to figure out and work a bit just to put some food on the table, work a bit to get something. And obviously, husband, when he left, he refused to give child support or help with anything. The kids that ask for prom dress and some clothes for school and nothing. So you know, thankfully my father helped me and helped provide everything I needed and get me back on my feet. But that's been my journey. And then even though I moved back to the States, I was still struggling with brokenness inside. I was still very broken and trying to figure it out. I thought if I met a new person and maybe they could be my knight in shining armor and help me heal, and that obviously didn't go good because I met someone who then broke my heart, you know. So it actually got worse, and you know, inwardly. But I had my family support, I had friend support, which helped. But then is when I found the Dr. Caroline Leaf's teachings on the brain, rewiring the brain, the mind and brain connection of rewiring it and healing it. I stumbled across Master Sri Kashina with his meditations and his deep breathing methods and the law of attraction and rewiring and changing yourself, and Lewis Howes and Jay Shetty. And through the pandemic hit, and I was watching them religiously. That's all I was doing, just watching the teachings over and over again. And whilst I was watching the teachings and just watching all of the podcasts by Lewis Howes and Jay Shetty, while I was watching them, I was applying the methods to my life. And as I was applying their methods to my life, I was changing on the inside out, and I was figuring it out. And I am so grateful that I was able to start this journey. And now, if you go back through my videos, you'll see that it's been a journey of healing from the inside out. And so I'm just asking you to go back through my videos. If you're struggling with depression or brokenness or any of these things, go back through my videos and see how I've done this and how I've changed from the inside out and how I've worked this out. And yeah, and so that's what I wanted to share with you today, just so that I could encourage you to come on this journey with me and to heal, because if I can do it, you can. If I can heal, you can heal too. And so until next time, I'll see you soon. Bye.